The Monkey King enjoyed himself innocently for 300 to 500 years. One day, during a banquet with other monkeys, he suddenly became worried and burst into tears. The monkeys hurriedly bowed and said, "Why are you worried, Your Majesty?" The Monkey King said, "Although I am happy, I have some worries, so I am worried." The monkeys laughed and said, "Your Majesty, you are so ungrateful. We have fun every day in the blessed land of the fairy mountains and ancient caves. We are not subject to the rule of the unicorn, the phoenix, or the throne of the human world. We are free and unfettered. This is an immeasurable blessing. Why worry about the future?" The Monkey King said, "Although I am not subject to the laws of human kings today, and I am not afraid of the beasts, I will be old and weak in the future. The King of Hell will secretly control me. Once I die, I will not be able to live in vain in the world and will not be able to live in the heavens for a long time." When the monkeys heard this, they covered their faces and cried, all worried about impermanence. Suddenly, a monkey with a long back jumped out from the group and shouted loudly, "If Your Majesty is so far-sighted, it is truly the development of the heart of Tao. Now among the 5 insects, there are only 3 kinds of names and colors that are not under the control of the King of Hell." The Monkey King said, "Do you know what these 3 kinds of people are?" The monkey said, "They are the Buddha, the immortals, and the sacred ones who have escaped the cycle of reincarnation, are immortal, and have the same lifespan as the heaven, earth, and mountains." The Monkey King said, "Where do these 3 live?" The monkey said, "They are only in the world of Yama, in the ancient cave fairy mountain." Hearing this, the Monkey King was filled with joy and said, "Tomorrow I will leave you and go down the mountain, travel to the corners of the sea, and travel far to the ends of the earth. I must visit these 3 people and learn how to be immortal and always avoid the troubles of the King of Hell." Ah! This sentence made him jump out of the cycle of reincarnation and become the great sage equaling heaven. The monkeys applauded and praised, saying, "Great! Great! We will climb the mountain and find some fruits tomorrow and prepare a big feast for the king." The next day, the monkeys went to pick peaches, exotic fruits, dig yam, polygonatum, orchids, fragrant orchids, rare flowers, and everything else was neatly arranged. They set up stone benches and stone tables, and arranged fairy wine and food. But they saw golden balls and beads, red and yellow. Golden balls and beads wax cherries, the color is really sweet, red and yellow plump plums, the taste is fruity and sour. Fresh longan, sweet meat and thin skin, fire lychee, small core and red capsule. Green apples are offered on the branches, and loquats are held up with yellow buds and leaves. Rabbit head pears and chicken heart dates quench thirst, relieve troubles, and relieve hangovers. Fragrant peaches and rotten apricots, sweet like jade liquid, crisp plums and bayberries, sour like fat and sour cream. Red-skinned black-seeded ripe watermelons, 4-lobed yellow-skinned large persimmons. Pomegranates cracked open, cinnabar grains revealed fire crystal beads, taro chestnuts split open, hard meatballs of gold agate. Walnuts and ginkgo can be used to make tea, coconuts and grapes can be used to make wine. Hazelnuts, pines, toria, and tangerines are placed on the plate, and tangerines, sugar canes, and oranges are placed on the table. Cooked yam, boiled polygonatum, crushed poria cocos and jobs tares, cooked in a stone pot over a low fire. Even if there are delicacies in the world, how can they be more peaceful than the joy of mountain monkeys? The monkeys respected the Monkey King and sat on the top, and each of them lined up according to their teeth and shoulders below. One by one, they took turns to come forward, offering wine, flowers, and fruits, and drank all day. The next day, the Monkey King got up early and said, "Little ones, break some dead pine for me and weave a raft, take a bamboo pole as a pole, and collect some fruits and other things, I will leave." He boarded the raft alone, paddled it with all his strength, and floated straight into the waves of the sea, taking advantage of the wind to cross the border of the southern Jambud pack. This trip is exactly like that. The immortal monkey born from heaven has great virtues, leaving the mountain on a raft and riding the wind. Sail across the ocean to find the immortal way, determined to concentrate on building great achievements. With fate and destiny, I will give up my worldly wishes and meet you on long without worries. He expected to meet a soulmate who could explain the origin and flow of all things. It was also his good fortune that he came at the right time. After he boarded the raft, the southeast wind was strong for several days, and it took him to the northwest shore, which was the border of the southern continent. He tried the water with a pole and found shallow water. He abandoned the raft and jumped onto the shore. He saw people fishing, hunting geese, digging clams, and panning for salt on the beach. He approached and performed a trick, pretending to be a tiger, which scared those people so much that they dropped their baskets and nets and ran away. He caught one of those who couldn't run, stripped him of his clothes, and imitated others to wear them. He swayed and walked through the states and prefectures, learning the etiquette and words of others in the dust of the city. He had breakfast and slept at night, and he was determined to learn the sacred way of Buddhas and immortals and find a way to live forever. He saw that all people in the world were people who pursued fame and fortune, and no one was concerned about their lives. It was just like that. When will the struggle for fame and fortune stop? Getting up early and sleeping late is not free. Riding a donkey or a mule, thinking about a good horse, being a prime minister, and looking forward to becoming a prince. If you only worry about food and clothing, why should you be afraid of the king of hell taking you? Stepsons and grandchildren seek wealth and honor, but none of them are willing to turn back. The Monkey King visited the immortals, but had no chance to meet them. He stayed in the southern continent, visited the Great Wall, and toured small counties for more than 8 or 9 years. Suddenly he came to the Western Ocean, thinking that there must be immortals overseas. He made a raft alone and drifted across the Western Ocean until he reached the border of the Western Niue continent. After landing and visiting for a long time, he suddenly saw a beautiful mountain with deep forests. He was not afraid of wolves, insects, tigers, and leopards, so he climbed to the top of the mountain to watch. It was indeed a good mountain. Thousands of peaks opened their spears, and thousands of feet opened their screens. The sun reflected the mist lightly locked the green, and the rain stopped, and the dark blue was cold and green. Withered vines entangled old trees, and the ancient fairy was secluded. Exotic flowers and rare grasses, tall bamboos and tall pines. The tall bamboos and tall pines are evergreen for thousands of years, deceiving the blessed land. The exotic flowers and rare grasses never fade in for seasons, just like Penjiang. The sound of birds singing is near, and the spring is clear. The valleys are full of orchids, and the cliffs are covered with moss. The undulating mountains have good dragon veins, and there must be a master who hides his name. While watching, I suddenly heard someone talking in the deep forest. I hurriedly walked into the forest and listened carefully. It turned out to be the sound of singing. The song goes, watching the chess pieces rot, the clinking of woodcutters walking slowly at the edge of the valley, selling firewood and wine, laughing wildly and intoxicated. The autumn is high, facing the moon, pillowing on the pine roots, and sleeping until dawn. Recognizing the old forest, climbing the cliff and crossing the ridge, holding an axe to cut the dead vines. Harvested into a load, singing in the market, exchanging for 3 liters of rice. There is no competition, the current price is average, no scheming, no honor or disgrace, and a peaceful life. Wherever we meet, it is either an immortal or a Taoist, sitting quietly and talking about Huangding. The Monkey King heard this and said with joy, "The immortal is hiding here." He jumped in quickly and looked carefully. It was a woodcutter chopping wood with an axe. But he was dressed very differently. He wore a bamboo hat on his head, which was the sheath of new bamboo shoots. He wore a cloth shirt, which was the yarn twisted from cotton. The belt tied around his waist was the silk spit out by old silkworms. He wore straw sandals, which were the coolness of dry sand. Holding a steel axe and carrying a hemp rope, he can chop pine trees and split dead trees. How can he be as good as this woodcutter? The Monkey King approached and called out, "Old immortal! Disciple, help me!" The woodcutter hurriedly dropped his axe, turned around and said, "I am not a human being. I am not a human being. I am poor and have no food or clothing. How dare I be called a god?" The Monkey King said, "You are not a god. How can you speak the words of gods?" The woodcutter said, "What words of gods am I speaking?" The Monkey King said, "I just came to the edge of the forest and heard you say, when we meet, we are either gods or Taoists. Sit quietly and talk about Huangding. Huangding is the true words of morality. How could it be anything other than gods?" The woodcutter laughed and said, To be honest, this poem is called Mantingfang. It was taught to me by a god. The god lived next door to me. He saw that I was busy with family affairs and had daily worries, so he taught me to recite this poem when I was troubled. First, it can relax your mind, and second, it can help you get out of trouble. I have been thinking about something that I don't know how to do, so I kept thinking about it. I didn't expect you to hear it. The Monkey King said, "Since your family is close to the gods, why don't you practice from them? Learn the secret of immortality? Isn't that good?" The woodcutter said, "My life has been hard. I was raised by my parents since I was young. I didn't know the world until I was 8 or 9 years old. Unfortunately, my father died and my mother became a widow. I have no brothers or sisters, only me. I have no choice but to serve her day and night. Now my mother is old, and I dare not leave her. But my fields are barren, and I don't have enough food and clothing. I can only cut 2 bundles of wood. I carry firewood to the market, sell a few coins, buy a few liters of rice, cook for myself, prepare some tea and food, and support my mother, so I can't practice cultivation." The Monkey King said, "According to what you said, you are a gentleman who practices filial piety. You will definitely benefit from it in the future. But I hope you can point out the residence of the immortals so that I can visit them." The woodcutter said, "Not far, not far. This mountain is called Lingtai Mountain. There is a Zayu Sangsing cave in the mountain. There is an immortal in the cave named Subhuti Patriarch. The disciples of the patriarch who left are countless. Counting, there are still 30 or 40 people following him to practice. You follow that path and go south for 7 or 8 miles, and you will reach his home." The Monkey King grabbed the woodcutter and said, "Brother, you can go with me. If I get any benefit, I will never forget your guidance." The woodcutter said, "You are a man who is very ignorant. I just told you this, but you still don't understand? If I go with you, won't it delay my business? Who will take care of my mother? I need to chop wood. You go by yourself, go by yourself." The Monkey King heard this and had to say goodbye. He came out of the deep forest, found the path, and passed a hillside. About 7 or 8 miles away, he saw a cave. He stood up to look. It was a great place. But he saw the smoke and haze were scattered, the sun and the moon were shaking. Thousands of old cypresses, thousands of bamboos. Thousands of old cypresses, with rain in the sky, green and slow, thousands of bamboos, with smoke in the valley, the color was gray. Outside the gate, there are exotic flowers and fragrant grass beside the bridge. The stone cliffs are abrupt and covered with green moss, and the cliffs are high and covered with green moss. Sometimes you can hear the cry of cranes and see phoenixes flying. When the cranes cry, their voices resound far into the sky. When the phoenixes fly, their feathers are colorful and shining. The black monkeys and white deer appear and disappear, and the golden lions and jade elephants hide and go as they please. Looking closely at the blessed land, it is really like heaven. I saw that the cave door was closed and there was no trace of people. Suddenly I turned around and saw a stone tablet standing on the cliff about 3 feet high and 8 feet wide, with a line of 10 big characters on it, which read, Lingtai Mountain, Zayu Sangsing Cave. The Monkey King was very happy and said, "The people here are really simple. There really is such a mountain and cave." After watching for a long time, he did not dare to knock on the door. "Let's jump on the top of the pine branches and pick pine nuts to eat and play." After a while, there was a sound of "yeah," and the cave door opened, and a fairy boy walked out. He was really handsome, with a unique appearance, different from ordinary people. He had a bun with 2 silks tied together, and a wide robe with 2 sleeves blowing in the wind. His appearance and body were different, and his heart and appearance were empty. He was a long-term guest outside the world, and a child of eternal life in the mountains. He was not stained by dust at all, and he could let the 60 years roll by.